We are live streaming. 3, 2, 1, action.
Good evening. Tonight it's Wednesday, March 16th, and this is the Hudson School Board of Education meeting. Can we all rise with pledge of allegiance? Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our executive session ran a little bit longer than anticipated. Thank you for being patient. Can I now get a motion to approve the agenda as stated? Can I get a second? All in favor? Aye. Thank you. And the recognition after the approval of the consent agenda.
No, before.
Okay. So our first item of business is a recognition.
As we've been doing for the last number of meetings, we have been inviting various students and groups with some of their teachers to our board meetings to be recognized and to be highlighted for programs or initiatives, or in this case, recognitions that sometimes go under the radar or not as is not as widely known. So I'd like to invite up Brendan Chen. Brendan is an 11th grader at the high school. Come on up to the podium, Brendan. Welcome. In January, Brendan had the opportunity to perform a piano piece at Carnegie Hall. And it was through an endeavor that was outside of the typical Hudson music program, but he certainly was supported by his music teacher, Mrs. Morabito, who couldn't be here tonight. But it is not often that students, especially 11th graders, are able to perform at Carnegie Hall, but as the saying goes, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice. And so we'd like to hear a little bit from Brendan about how you ended up in this competition, some of the processes that you went through, and tell us a little bit about your performance. And I even think when we're done, we'll show a little YouTube clip of you performing at Carnegie Hall. So welcome, Brendan, and share some of your story with us.
Okay, so I began my music journey when I was 4. I started playing piano at 4, and it was during my first year of high school that I first entered my first competition, and I got first place, and I got gold. I entered 3 competitions. I got gold, and bronze. And for the first 2, I received the opportunity to perform at Carnegie Hall. And I would like to thank Mrs. Morabito for attending my first competition, my first recital actually, at Carnegie Hall. Well, unfortunately, she couldn't be here today. And I was supposed to go a 3rd time, but that was around when COVID started, so I wasn't able to go a 3rd time. But I was very grateful for the opportunity. And in 4th grade in elementary school, I continued my music education when I picked up the viola, and I continued that throughout middle school and into high school. And after a gap year of COVID, I'm back to performing. I auditioned virtually for the same 3 competitions, and again, I received 2 golds and a bronze, and I received the opportunity to perform at Carnegie Hall this year. And I would just like to thank everybody in this room for commending me, because I grew up in this community for my entire life, and to be given this honor is a very big deal. So thank you, everybody.
We're going to show the YouTube clip. This was
my audition tape.
This was your audition tape. And tell us, give us a quick little background, and then we'll listen to a little bit.
I recorded this in my house, and I sent this virtually to the 3 competitions I was applying for. That's it.
My name is Brendan.
What piece are you playing?
Oh, I'm playing Chopin's Etude, Opus 10, number 4. No, number 3.
So let's give it a minute.
My name is Brendan Chen, and I'll be performing Chopin's Etude Opus 10, number 3.
Musician, are they ranked? Look like. And orchestra, you play another instrument, correct?
I play the viola, yes. I'm doing NISMA level 6. I'm going for all state this year.
Congratulations. Thanks for sharing your talents with us and good luck.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
You have a question for Brendan?
That was awesome. My question is, how many takes did it take to get that? Because it looked great, sounded great. How many takes did that take?
Maybe 10 takes.
Wow.
I had 5 which I liked. I sent them to my piano teacher and she chose the best one.
Congratulations, awesome.
Thanks. Amazing. Thank you very much for coming to the meeting first, and your piece was lovely. It was amazing. All right, so that brings us to the approval of our consent agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda as stated? Can I get a second? Oh, wait, I have to pull first.
Yeah.
Never mind. I got so distracted by the beautiful music that I'm going out of order. Does anybody have anything to pull from our consent agenda before we approve the rest of it?
I'd like to pull item 4.3, please.
That's fiscal 4.3. Anybody else have anything to pull? Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda? Can I get a second? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, now we can go to items removed from the consent agenda, fiscal 4.3.
Thank you. I just wanted to pull for discussion the bond proposal for the buses. Can we start with that one? Just to help people understand what that is for. We've discussed, I know in public meetings before, that we were going to be doing this bond, but the proposition, what exactly that is for and how that works. Thanks.
Sure. Like Liz presented a couple of weeks ago, the proposition will include up to 72 passenger type D buses. And these buses will replace two 2006 Bluebird 72 passenger buses. Each of them currently has around 110,000 miles, and the other one 113,000 miles. And the cost to replace these vehicles is approximately $315,000. If you remember the last board meeting, we had a discussion about electric buses. So one of the reasons that we still cannot buy any electric buses is that, just imagine, for two buses, we're paying $315,000. Each electric bus today is about $300,000 to $400,000. So the price will have to come down substantially before we can start buying electric vehicles. Well, in addition to these two buses, we need to buy two 18-passenger single-wheel vans that are outfitted for a wheelchair lift. That's for our special education children that need a wheelchair. So it's the lift that brings down the lift. The child goes in with the wheelchair and then it brings it up, and it has a special area for the wheelchair. The vehicles that we're replacing, they both have over 140,000 miles. And the cost to replace these two vehicles is approximately $115,000. In addition, the district needs a vehicle to be used by the Buildings and Grounds Department for various tasks, including supply delivery, mail delivery, and snow removal. This will be a cost of $50,000. And one of the questions the board might ask is, why do we have to buy a new vehicle when in the past we used the old Suburbans? And like please explain, in the past the Suburbans had bigger motors, were more sturdy. So now for the snow removal, the new vehicles will not push the snow. So we need a specific vehicle for that. And the total proposition will be not to exceed $500,000. Any question?
Just so the public understands that what we're saying on the screen right now is the bond proposition, which is what will be on the ballot when you vote.
Yes,
Correct?
yes. And that's a separate proposal. There's going to be 3 propositions this year, like most of the years: the budget, the library, and the bus proposition.
Very good. The other item I wanted to discuss was the Buchanan Lane Cafeteria.
Does anybody else have any questions about the bus proposition?
The buses that we are decommissioning this? How old are they? Do you know roughly how long they're?
They are 2006, so
Okay,
they are 17 years old.
Okay.
The other ones, it doesn't say, but they have about 140,000 miles. So you know what we try to do is we sell them. We try to sell them as buses, but unfortunately, we rarely can sell them as buses. We sell them as scrap to the scrap metal.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, down the road.
That's it. I just want to know. Thanks. I just want to know lifespan.
Anybody else have any questions about the bus proposition? All right, thank you, Lisa. You have another question?
It's about the transfer of funds for the Begin and Reclaim Cafeteria renovation. I know we've been discussing doing that renovation, and I just wanted to understand a little bit more about that transfer.
Sure. We're going to use, well, the cost is going to be approximately $1 million. And we're going to use the two sources of funds. The first source of fund is cafeteria fund balance. The cafeteria has around $700,000 in fund balance. We are only asking now for $150,000 because we just started the project, and this money will be to pay architects and the first part. So I'm asking now for $150,000 of transfer, but as the project develops, I will be coming back to the board to ask to move the rest of the money from the cafeteria fund. The source for the project, if you remember, I mentioned that we have a new line item in our general fund budget that is capital project, and I'm asking for $150,000 and another $150,000 next year. That will bring us to around the $1.1 million that will cost to renovate the cafeteria. It is important to mention that because in order for that money to be aidable, we need to tell the community that $150,000 is going for a capital project. So every time we talk about the cafeteria capital project, I will mention the source of funds. So if anyone disputes that, it was very clear to the community that they are all voting for $150,000 for the cafeteria project.
Any other questions about this? Yeah. Any other questions from fiscal 4.3? Can I get a motion to approve fiscal 4.3? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. We have a second item that was removed from the consent agenda, and that is a donation. It's a donation for the Margaret McCory, Scholarship Fund. The district has received a donation totaling $1,500 from the Margaret McCory Scholarship Fund. Joe, can you tell us a little bit about this?
I'm not entirely sure. I think this might be one of our newer ones that a community member reached out to the high school. I don't have to report that.
Thank you very, very much for that generous donation and for the scholarship fund. Can I get a motion to approve this donation, please? Can I get a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Which will bring us to our superintendent's report.
A couple updates. We've invited some of our staff to share some of their work, given their roles and responsibilities in our organizations. We transitioned to implementing the Princeton plan. So I'll invite up Abby Polito. Abby is our, at this present moment, our lone school counselor committed to all of our elementary students. She is hopeful, as is the rest of us, that she may find a partner next year, which a second school counselor for the elementary students is in the budget. But as we go through our budget process and the public determines the fate of our budget, Abby is responsible for working with our staff and her colleagues in the mental health division, trying to support and get students ready for a transition. For those of you who have elementary students, you have heard by now, you've I'm sure received the email, and hopefully you've sent back the permission slip for your child to go visit their prospective school next year. I believe that earlier this week, all of the BB students who will be going to a different school have done that. And next week, students from Frank G will visit their prospective schools, as will Furnace Woods. That's an important step in acclimating students and getting them to see their new surroundings and engage with their new principal and try to figure out where things are. But what Abby is doing, both very publicly and in small groups or in classrooms or with individual students, is also as important. So Abby, if you could just walk us through briefly what you've been up to and how you're supporting students as we get ready for this change.
Okay, thanks for having me tonight. I'm going to be talking a little bit about what's happening at each of the schools, as well as what the mental health team is doing. So right now, just what's happening right now is there are ongoing events celebrating at each of the schools, and that looks a little different for each school. And those celebrations are just to kind of say goodbye to the current format that we have, starting new. So for example, at Furnace Woods, each month there's a theme. We did a planting of bulbs as 1 month, and so that's something that will come back each time. Or at BB, we have an important anniversary coming up, so there's a lot of sharing on that as well. I know the principals have also been committed to helping the staff kind of say goodbye and creating some different gatherings. And again, that looks different at each building. Furnace Woods, we just had a gathering a couple weeks ago in the library, just a nice social time for the staff to connect. I know Ms. Tracy at FGL is having a staff gathering, and she's planning for the spring, and she's really excited about as well. I have presented at a few of the PTA meetings just to help support parents and students who might be experiencing any kind of stressors or anxiety. And so that occurred in October and January. We're also tailoring our PBIS program. So our PBIS program is different in each school, and as our mascot is different at each school. So where one might be owl and eagle and sailor, we are looking to make sure that we are taking all 3 schools and bringing them together. So we want to make sure that our PBIS program uses language that is going to be consistent through all 3 buildings. So the principals are hard at work making sure that we're tailoring those expectations to be the same at each building, as well as using that common language. The kids don't have to relearn something every 2 years. And I believe they start that in December, and that is ongoing. Last month, the PPS department presented to families who have students who are receiving services for special education. And the department, along with some related services providers like mental health, speech, things like that, talked about what the different programs were going to be in each building. With the changes, some parents had some questions about, am I still going to get OT there, or my child going to get PT here? So we had that smaller group presentation in February to present on the various programs in each building. The principals have already started visiting all the classes. Last month, they completed that. So they just wanted to do the first hello, is popping into the classroom, saying hello, letting the students get a face with a name. And then myself and my mental health colleagues have just kind of supported any students who have expressed anxiety or concern about what's happening, or parents have reached out and said, hey, my son or daughter is a little nervous about this, could you touch base? So that's kind of an ongoing thing that's been happening, as well as parents in the same position. Some parents are also who might be feeling a little bit anxious. I know our principals have been great about talking to them, and myself and colleagues as well. On the next slide, I'm talking about what's coming up for us. So And I'm just double checking there. Okay, so in the winter and the spring, we had started the pen pal project, which I think you have elementary students might know that they are writing to students in other buildings and kind of getting to know someone that they're going to connect with next year as they're going to be in the same building, finding out what's your favorite thing about the school and, different things like that, making it an exciting project for them. The students, as Mr. Huckrider said, have started to visit new schools, and that has been going on this week. I was with Dr. Kramer when she was helping some of our fourth graders, the ambassadors. I had a little sheet to welcome them. What are the important things for a tour, so that they start to make connections. And so that is ongoing right now, making sure that the kids are touring each building, and then the new principal of that building is meeting them there as well. For myself, in the spring, I'm doing some additional lessons on coping strategies and what to do if we're feeling anxiety. It's some of the work that I do often in small groups, but I'm going to make sure that it happens in each of our 53 classrooms, 51 or 53. And again, we want to make sure that we're validating any feelings they're having, but also sharing excitement. So there could be some things that they might be nervous about, but there's a lot of exciting opportunities, and we can help children by modeling that behavior as well. Also, I told them I would make a Kahoot for them, where if you guys have, any of your kids know Kahoot, they get so excited. So I promised them a Kahoot quiz style of getting to know your new building. Over the summer, the principals are definitely going to open the buildings to do any additional tours, so people are feeling comfortable, and some open house events. I'm also going to have some office time so kids can check in with me, because we don't want to end in June and have anyone feeling anxious and then you're going to see till September. So I'll have some office time for parents or children who would like some additional support. We're also talking about vertical planning meetings. That way, if a child has some kind of service, let's say they're getting speech in second grade, we want to make sure that the related service providers are having conversations with each other across the building, so that that information is being carried out each year. Same thing with nurses, medical issues, things like that. We want to make sure that it's a cohesive planning upwards in that vertical planning. In the fall, we're going to make sure that we reinforce all the things actually that I'm kind of doing now when I have new students, or students transitioning back from remote, where we are helping them with coping strategies. Again, if there's anxious feelings, what do we do with that? Checking in with them, but also creating groups for anyone who might be struggling or went from having 40 kids in their grade to 150. How can we support them to make sure that they're making friends and connections? So we will be doing some small group work, myself and social workers. So I'm really excited about a lot that's going on, and I hope that we are doing our best to support our students. I know that the principals wanted me to share how much they're committed to connecting with the students and building that connection with them. And one of the ways they're hoping to do that is also plan an event that brings the whole grade together this spring as well. So, thank you.
Thank you so much for coming and speaking with us. Do you have something?
No, just some questions. And then we'll go to the next.
Sorry, I heard Mr. Huckrider say something, and I wasn't sure what it was. So thank you very much.
Our next update is from Megan Boyle. A number of years ago, some of our board members will remember Megan well for a number of reasons. One, assistant coach on the sectional women girls basketball team, which that game was played just days before, right? Yeah, days before the world shut down 2 years ago. But she has been a classroom teacher and a library teacher with us for a while, and she and one of her colleagues, working closely with Margaret, really helped us move the needle from the traditional library to really it being a hands-on, interactive space where we could implement some of our STEM curriculum. And although we've taken a brief hiatus with the pandemic, we're really excited to re-engage in that work. And we're so excited that Megan is going to lead that work for us at the 4th and 5th grade school. Her other colleagues couldn't join us, but she has agreed to represent them in giving us an update and giving families an update on what will be different next year as students engage with what we used to know as the library and what you and your colleagues will be doing differently and what everyone can expect.
So the first slide is just talking about what we did pre-COVID. I was there for 2 years. I worked really closely with Newper Val Polish. She showed me a lot of what she was doing. We did a lot of hour of code, Ozobots, STEM challenges. If you click it. If you look at the pictures, a lot of it is isolated activities, which was really great for what the kids needed. So they were doing team building challenges. In the bottom, we did an egg drop challenge where the students had to build something to support an egg. We would give them directed challenges for the younger students, like read 3 Little Pigs, build them a new house, and doing different coding during the hour of code time. So we used Ozobots, we used Scratch coding, we used CS First. At that time, a lot of it was just isolated skills. So it wasn't necessarily content integrated with ELA and social studies. It was us looking at the STEM standards and science standards and what we could do as an isolated program. So what we're looking forward to moving forward is being able to really integrate the curriculum and do a lot more content-based things. So we're gonna be doing Science 21, she's building a circuit. You can play it.
I'm just going to get this guy. Wow.
So we're in that video right now, it's my 4th grade class doing Science 21, but next year they'll be doing Science 21 where it's a lot more hands-on learning. And then if you look at the bottom, that's my class right now doing a STEM challenge that I would like to be doing in the future. I gave them a problem. I said, you're going to a farmer's market and the farmer needs a new stand to hold up the pumpkin. Build it. And I gave them certain constraints. They had a certain amount of money and each item they wanted to use was worth a certain amount of money. So they had to really budget, they had to plan it, and it was really cool. They were really proud of themselves. And I realized how heavy a pumpkin is. But the goal moving forward is project-based learning and how can we solve problems. So another example, I'm looking to in 4 or 5, they learn a lot about energy and how to convert energy, different energy sources. So instead of me standing in front of them teaching about energy, okay, here's your project. How are we going to power the school? What energy sources are you going to use? And they create the resources and they create this project. And through doing that, they learn, oh, this is where this energy source comes from. This is what I can buy that. And it's not as driven by me. It's driven by what they want to do. And with technology, I know we all want them to be good at technology, but what is that tool for? So we're looking at STEM more as what are the standards and the skills the kids need leaving us. By right now, the jobs that they're going to need when they leave aren't even made yet. So what are the real skills that they're going to need? So the highlights I think we're looking at on the next page, if you press the. So I wanted to add this. I had a different look of the pictures, and then that bottom picture, I had emailed all administration said, can I please add this? We did it today. They were doing Science 21, and the experiment was, I need you to build a communication device that uses one energy source and converts it into light or converts it into sound, and then send a message through Morse code. And they built that entire thing. I showed them the materials they had, and that was all I did. They were like, well, what should we do with this? I was like, I don't know. And they came up with that whole thing. They decided that, sorry about that, they were going to plug in the battery and use the wires to create a light source, and they labeled the different types of energy and how it's transferring. I had other students that said to me, well, if I take the cup and put aluminum foil over it, doesn't that become reflective and now you can see it from farther? I was like, I don't know, you have to try it. And then they became more excited and it wasn't me. So that's really what we're looking for going into the future, trying to take project-based learning. And the nice thing is when I taught it in library, I was K-5. So I had to look at what are they doing in every single grade and can I bring it in? And it was a little more challenging, whereas this, it's 2 grade levels. I can really focus on what are they doing in the classroom and how can I bring that in? So for example, they're doing the American Revolution in 4th grade. I can say, okay, during my time, you're going to build something that would help the soldiers of the American Revolution with the technology that we have now. So we're incorporating the STEM skills, but it's more content driven and able to integrate all of STEM at the same time and not just in an isolated way. So I'm very excited about it and I think it'll be fun and I will let you know if this works. They're very excited tomorrow, so.
It's amazing, thank you. Does anybody have any questions?
How often will students be in STEM?
2 times in a 6-day cycle, which is nice because before it was only 1 time, so it'll be 2 times.
So this is pretty much what I think most adults would consider a lab-based, is this?
Kind of, yes.
Hands-on.
I see it as more of, yes, there's lab time, but it's also project-based time, so maybe they're doing a hands-on like that with the circuits, but maybe another student says to me, well, I want to make an app that educates someone on what you're, so it really depends on what the kids want to be doing.
Okay, love it, it's great.
So this will be part, this will be part of the 6-day cycle. They'll have it twice within those 6 days.
Mhm.
Are they losing something else to add in STEM? Is this replacing something or just in addition to?
I mean, as far as I know, I think this is their library time, and then the teacher will have an additional credit that one day they will be with me.
Awesome.
My eventual hope is to do more of like a push in, like if I have a free period, I can come too, and we can really integrate it together, because it shouldn't just be time with me. This is stuff they should be doing all the time.
Awesome, thank you.
And just to recycle all the way back to how we began this project and using the library media specialist, and that's their official term. We looked at the standards of what students need to learn. We looked at the job description of what we would know as a librarian. And 2 things. One, that has become a really outdated field, traditional library. And we wanted to accentuate the learning standards that were around STEM and that's in the New York State curriculum and match that with what the expectations are today of elementary teachers of teaching, next gen science, science 21, so on and so forth. So it was a perfect marriage, which I think we started this year, right, 2 years before COVID, so around 2018.
Mhm.
What students will experience is they'll see Megan or her colleagues both in a push-in or come to the lab, come to the library. Over the last number of years, we've made some adjustments and we'll continue to make that more of a lab sense. But on the other end, for folks who are wondering, well, what do we do with books and computers and any artifacts of a traditional library? These folks and Margaret have been working with the regional library associate, I don't know his name, BOCES, to help us make sure that our reading inventory is where it should be, to make sure that books are going to be moved so that every child will still have the opportunity multiple times a week to go do book exchange, do research on their own, so on and so forth. It's just moving a little more of the core instruction to exactly what Megan said, and using that time and space a little more uniquely than we have.
That was my question. It was about, I love this program, but as the daughter of a school librarian, there's something to say for that time that a student goes in and gets to browse through books. And I just want to make sure that we're not losing that function of letting children explore and learn that way. So that will still be there.
Yeah, and our head librarian or librarian leader in the district has been working with us and with BOCES on that to make sure that each of the schools have relevant material, and not just for 4th and 5th grade, but the library at Furnace Woods is not going to have materials from 6th, 7th, and 8th grade for students who need, who want to go deeper, faster, or more rigorous. But that absolutely will remain part of the program. We wanted to remind people that we haven't forgotten about the project we started, and now being organized this way next year, we'll be able to actually go a little bit deeper, because instead of Megan working with 6 different grade levels of teachers, she's going to work and be part of that curriculum experience.
Anybody else have any questions? Thank you very much. Very
Thank you.
exciting program.
Yes.
Thank you for bringing it here tonight. And especially appropriate since we have our library budget that's being presented tonight. So, but before that, we have a pre-K.
Yes, our last update is around pre-K. We met or discussed this last February. I think it was actually on February 16th. And the board asked us to come back with a more itemized proposal. So the first couple slides are what the board and community has seen. We have been allocated $183,000 for pre-K. That's good news. The good news is the school district received pre-K money. The bad news is we're $60,000 short from actually having pre-K in our district. While we have been advocating for more pre-K funds, we've been advocating for the formula to not be statewide, but to be specific to our region for cost of living purposes. We believe that our lawmakers have heard us. In fact, in the one House budget that the Senate and that the Assembly proposes, they're actually proposed more pre-K funding. What we don't know is whether that will even out the formula or if that's just more money at the existing formula. So we will not know any of that until the governor, the Assembly, and the Senate has a budget. Hopefully they'll have the budget on time, which will be by the end of this month. And maybe we will not need $60,000 additional district money to do this. But right now we've got to move forward based on what we know. And this is the best information we have at the moment. What we also know is, as I said, the formula is statewide. And that many districts, we are not uncommon having to use general funds to make sure we can support the program. So for us, what does the 183 and change provide for us? 2 classrooms. The classrooms would be at Frank G with kindergarten and first grade. We would have 2 teachers and 2 teaching assistants. Each classroom would have a teacher and a full-time teaching assistant. And we would have around 17 students per class in each, 17 students per class in each of the classrooms. The participation is based on a lottery if the demand outweighs the number of seats. So we have a very stringent process to follow in order to identify who would be eligible for pre-K. We have a process to follow in case we have too many people for the 34 seats. We do have space at Frank G. The goal for this program, even starting with 2 classrooms, so that they have a school experience, that they go to specials, they work with the principal, they'll experience a little bit about what Megan was sharing, they'll play on playgrounds, all of those things. One of the hangups or one of the hiccups we have that we talked about a month ago is transportation. And our recommendation is that if we move forward with this program, knowing that we are really in a time crunch to notify parents and certainly notify staff and get this program up and running. Our recommendation would be to not provide transportation in the first year, but to evaluate that in the out years, because there are a lot of considerations we would need to take into account, and those considerations would have a budget implication beyond what we currently have right now. For example, car seats, monitors, would it be a separate bus run for pre-K, so on and so forth. So while we work out those questions and answers, we didn't want that to hold up the opportunity for parents at home that they might be able to send their 4-year-old to our school next year. And transportation is not, A, it's not mandated, and B, it's not all that common. There are many school districts around us that have pre-K that do not transport for myriad of reasons, and some are the ones I just shared. So starting small, starting with 2 classrooms, with the caveat that families need to transport their children is not an uncommon way to dip our toe in the water. So in terms of the expenses, this is it. The $183,000 is what we'll receive from the state. As we talked a month ago, we need to find a collaborator that is eligible for at least 10% of those funds. So the district will receive $165,000. We budget 2 teachers at $80,000. We have teaching assistants already in the budget. It's a carryover from our existing elementary model. And then we need to, as Margaret alluded to a month ago, those classrooms may need specific furniture and certainly supplies, curriculum, workbooks, disposables, all of those things, totaling $65,000. So between the district allocation of the $165,000 and $60,000 local, will be able to cover our expenses. Depending on, again, how the budget plays out between the Assembly, Senate, and the executive, the governor, we may receive more funds. Any more pre-K funds would reduce the $60,000 that we would contribute. It actually would go into that calculation, the 183 or 165. I know that one of the top questions that Margaret receives from incoming parents or folks who are considering moving here is pre-K. And as of today, I think we're one of the only districts in this part of the county that doesn't have it yet. And we're very fortunate and appreciative that our lawmakers have included this in our foundation aid. We wish it was a little bit more, but we also know that we have many students coming into our district over the last number of years in kindergarten that have some needs, and pre-K is an opportunity to start a little bit earlier and help kids at 4 years old rather than wait for 5. So if, certainly, I know we'll have some questions, but if we have consensus, really what we would need is the board to give us direction to move forward, because we would need to do very significant parent outreach. We need to identify the staff. And this is the time when families of young children are planning childcare for next year and figuring out, what their routines will be.
Questions? Bill?
Was any thought given to the question I raised 2-4 weeks ago about offering it to more than 34 students?
Yes, we could. The math would still be the same in terms of our outlay. And that would increase the amount that we would have to contribute. One of the issues or concerns we would have is if we go beyond 2 classrooms right now. Cindy, who will be the principal of Frank G, is a little concerned about space, and then we would have to look at the schedule of specials to make sure we could offer that to all children within the current staffing. These 2 funded positions through foundation aid, we could do that without having a space issue and without having a schedule issue. Anything beyond 2 would be of concern, especially since our kindergarten enrollment and registration is always unknown. I think right now the numbers in the 70s. We have about 70 children estimated for kindergarten. You'll see our projections are in the 120s, and usually registration leaks even into mid-September after the buses drive around. And so our recommendation isn't to go beyond the 2 right yet for those reasons.
I hear you, especially as a new program, but I think that's something we should sincerely consider after we see how this initial run goes, because I think it's an incredible value to the community.
Alexis, you like that question?
Yeah, so I think it is an incredible value to the community, and I think since it's come up again this year, it's been a hot topic in the community. Immediately, I've heard from so many people that just love the idea of having this available for next year. But it does concern me because I could tell you on, 2 hands, I already know people that would love to be part of this. I just don't know that 34 seats is going to cover half of the demand. I also have a little bit of concern about the outlaid budget that was presented today. Immediately, the funding is used by the 2 teachers. And I'm all for putting more money towards it. I just think that we need to dive a little bit deeper and make sure that we are putting the right funds, if that's what we choose to do, towards it. The 2 teachers, I imagine, are going to be part of, benefits, pension system, all of that. So I feel like it's got to be more than 80,000. And it will increase over time, which we need to be prepared for, hoping that we get more aid. But again, we don't know that it's guaranteed every year either. So I think it's something that we really need to discuss deeper, from my opinion. It doesn't mean that I don't support it. I support UPK. I think it would be a great addition to our community. I just think we need to think really long and hard, especially because we're about to embark on Princeton Plan and we're taking on a huge transition. Dr. Kramer is as well, right? And I want to make sure that if we're offering these specials, that we have proper staffing for however many children we end up, making the program for. So I would love to hear the other board members kind of opinion like Bill threw out. Because I'm concerned about demand being way higher than supply and the budget not being pretty concrete. I mean, furniture, 2 classrooms, 40,000. I think we need a little bit more specific. It might be more, it might be less, and that's great. I think I'd like to see more specific numbers.
Or anything, comments on the
Yeah,
teacher salary and
sure, I can comment on the teacher salary. The district usually at the elementary school level, we hire a step 1. Why? Because there are a lot, the demand and supply. You can find 1 physics teacher compared to 20 elementary school teachers for 1 position. So usually we start the physics teachers as steps beyond 1. But elementary school really for, I don't know, Margaret, you can tell them for 1 position we have what, 20, 30 applicants.
100 resumes for an elementary job.
So step 1 is $54,000. If you add teachers' retirement system and social security, that's another 17%. So that's what, let's say 20%, that's another 10,000. So that's 64,000. And then if you add, let's say the average 15,000 for health insurance, some are married, some are single. So, you know, we always get to the around $80,000 for a step 1 MA teacher, but that's what I think they are planning to hire. So those numbers are correct. The teaching assistants, like Joe said, are already there. Margaret, you can talk a little bit about furniture. I have not been involved in the cost of furniture, but we've been buying furniture all over. For example, we don't have any here, but where we sat there, those are $100 to $120 each. The chairs, the class chairs that we sat there,
Oh.
yeah, they are about $100 to $120 each. So
we have actually we have more than 2 kindergarten outfitted right now that we will not use next year because we're reducing the Ks from 10 to 7. So there is, and that is suitable for a 4-year-old. What we probably need that we don't have is more manipulatives. We would need a block center, we would need like a housekeeping center. That isn't going to come to what the numbers that Joe has there. We could certainly look and price it. I just want to talk a minute about the lottery system. So really almost every district that I know of, perhaps Peekskill, because they get way more funding than we do, and rightfully so. And I taught there, so they have a very long-standing program in pre-K, and yes, they do. They are able to take all of their students. Most of the districts, Croton, us, potentially, Lakeland, they are lottery. And I mean, when I was in Clarkstown, we were lottery. So you get X amount of dollars. It's entirely up to the district if they want to fully fund the program, which means every kid that's eligible as a 4-year-old would go. But I honestly can't say that a lot of districts do that. They take what they get, and if it's 34 seats or 50 seats or 10 seats, that's what they offer to the community. And we, you know, if they offer us more money and we either chose not to or decided we couldn't house it this first year, then that gets put out in the collaboration bids through the request for proposal. So we may have a local provider who would take a number of seats from us as well.
Is the lottery a percentage, like in comparison to, like, so we have 125 on average kindergartners. This is 34. You know what I mean? Like, does Lakeland work on a percentage? I know it's a lottery, but I think a lot of people are.
And they're pulling their lottery like this week or
And they
next.
also do it different. They don't do the full day. It's either or.
They seem to have a split program, which I find interesting. I'm not really sure the nitty gritty of it, but they do not have seats for every student in the district. So they also run a lottery. As a matter of fact, I remember them telling my son, you know, put down that you want both AM and PM, because some people will only put AM and they may get shut out if that particular time frame is filled. So, you know, again, if we do get extra money through the bill that's working its way through the legislature, it would be wonderful to say that we had an opportunity for more seats. I think we would say 34, 17. So there's a cap also in pre-K. You have 17 with a teacher and a TA. If you go one student over that, you need another teaching assistant. So but, you know, there are requirements that we have to meet, and so do the institutions we would collaborate with. That's part of the problem last year. A lot of the private setups did not want to spend the money to particularly have the level of insurance that was required by New York State. They had trouble finding teaching staff that were certified. They also have to have that on site. So there's still, you know, there's a lot of possibility. Again, depending on what level of funding there is that comes down, we could potentially get another 10 seats and then say to a collaborator, would you take 14 kids? Because we are required to give them a minimum of 10%.
The reason why I think demand is going to be so high is because the last 2 years with COVID, everyone's working from home. Oh, I can run my kid to and from preschool.
Joe was not kidding when he said for a few years now, not just this year, that has been the #1 question when people call to say, I'm looking for a house. Do you have UPK? And the reason for that is because the city has UPK. Everybody that's moving up here already has their kid in the program. So they want to move someplace where that's continued or offered for their next children. But a lot of our current residents, I know I have a couple of parents who call me regularly, and I tell them, keep calling, watch the board meeting, to see if it's possible that this will be an opportunity for them. Joe was right also, that parent I just spoke with, his child is in a pre-K, is in a program right now, and I said, so if I were you, I would re-register her where you are and then wait and see what happens with whether we approve it and then whether you get in the lottery. At least she'll have a seat someplace else if this doesn't work. So, you know, it's an exciting opportunity, but, you know, clearly an opportunity that you have to give us direction to follow through on.
Thank you.
Jen? What happens, sorry, what happens if a collaborator, what qualifies for, I mean, I think we already talked about last year what qualifies for a collaborator, but what if none of the local preschools still don't qualify for a collaborator? What happens?
If they don't, then that 10% comes back to us.
Okay. And then when we say teaching assistants that are we already have them, does that mean we have extra TAs that are in K1 building or anticipated being K1 building?
Yes, we would assign them to the K1 building for pre-K.
Okay, so we have enough staff and it won't short.
For TAs.
Okay. Thank you.
I understand the benefits as home values and the special ed services moving forward. My biggest hesitation is that we're in the middle of two major projects as a district, between Princeton Plan and the strategic plan. I don't know if we have the bandwidth to take on a third major initiative, and that's my, I hesitate to know that we can, I don't want to spread ourselves too thin. While it's going to benefit the community long-term, for the sake of 34 spots, whereas we've got 500 kids in the elementary school or, 2,200 across the district, we're already going down these paths of Princeton Plan and strategic plan, and I don't want to lose focus on those because we're starting a new initiative. So that's my hesitation. If you ask me this time next year, I would say, yeah, let's do it. Joe said, if we've got to move quickly, and so everything to me kind of feels rushed to start a new program when we're already working on other things. So I don't know if this is the right time for our district for pre-K.
Joe, do you want to speak to that?
We wouldn't be proposing it if we couldn't do it. I know Margaret and I have been having a lot of conversations with Cindy, maybe now weekly, looking at space and schedule and those sort of things. I know I've had previous experiences with pre-K and just the noise out there in the community about, why not? I hear what you're saying. We have a lot of plans in the air. A family moving in with young children don't care about that. They want to know that they want to know if we have a pre-K program, and that will decide if they move into our community. But 34 more kids in 2 classrooms that will have their own community within a school of only 4, 5, and 6-year-olds is really exciting, and we wouldn't be here if we didn't think we could do it.
Yeah, I can say this, that, sorry, I can say this, that likely, unless we decide we're not interested at all, which is what happened last year when we lost the ability to collaborate and we were not anywhere near prepared to take it on internally, we still have to go through the same process. So we still have to issue an RFP. We still have to find a collaborator. I would argue from a purely selfish standpoint that it's more work for me to oversee a collaborator than it is for me to work with 2 teachers at Frenchie. So the teachers are moving anyway. Everybody's going to that building. There is space, there is classroom furniture. The pre-K curriculum is actually already written and it exists in terms of us acquiring it. There's not much that would change if we say, put it out to the community and we'll pass another year. All of the same things have to happen. So I don't know how much of a difference it makes to wait another year in terms of are we ready or are we not ready. I could tell you if our kindergarten team were here, they would tell you they've been ready for a long time and they're eagerly awaiting the opportunity to get those babies and do some work with them. But again, that's your decision in giving us the guidance that you want us to have.
Thank you.
Yep.
We just asked Lisa, do you have any questions before we go back to Jen?
Sorry.
It's okay. Try to do one.
That's fine.
I could use a little bit of refresher, I guess, on what that 10% for the collaboration involves, if you don't mind repeating again for us what that is involved with.
So it literally is 10% of the grant goes to a collaborator. So for us, you can think of it in terms of seats. So if we have 34 seats, we're farming out 3 seats as a minimum. Last year, when we had no ability and no appetite to take this on internally, we were looking for collaborators that were willing to take 34. And that could have been 2 people, 16 each. It could have been 4 or 5. In a previous district, we farmed it out and worked with 9 different preschools. So it just depends on what can be housed in the local area, so to speak, and whether or not those local collaborators can meet the need. There's always the potential for the district to put more money in the pot than the 10%. That's an individual district choice to make. So there's that.
So if the collaborator is taking 3 or 4 of those seats, and that reduces the number we would have in our building, or would we still be able to?
That would be our decision to make. If we stayed with 34 and then gave them the 3 seats, no, we're losing, what is it? The funding. Right. You're welcome. Jen?
So do you have current staff that are interested in this
Oh,
program?
boy, do I ever. They would have gladly come tonight to talk to you about their belief in the need for the program. We do, I'm sure you all know this, every kindergarten program screens their incoming K students. And sometimes it's a formal tool, sometimes it's a homegrown tool. We're about to engage in that process again in May. One of the things that we do every year is the kindergarten team, along with the OTPT and whoever else that is part of that process for us, they'll sit down and look at the results. And then we run a kinder camp every year, I think long before I was here, because I inherited that. The purpose of it is just to provide a 3 week before school opens, kind of intro to, hey guys, this is school, you know, they may not have had a pre-K experience, and so this is what it will feel like to come to kindergarten this year. There's not a lot that can happen in 3 weeks outside of making kids comfortable coming to a bigger building, et cetera. But we still experience a good number of our incoming kindergarten students who have no pre-K background at all. So there are kids who have varying degrees of preschool. There's a more formal preschool setting. There's some that is more of a daycare experience. And then there's a lot of kids who are home with maybe grandma or mom and not having a school setting, still learning something, but those are very different experiences on a continuum. And so, we try very hard to, so it's the youngest children are always the biggest gaps from one another in terms of learning opportunity. So, can at all try to close those gaps, the earlier the better, is what we would say.
Anybody else have any questions? So do we need to make a decision on this tonight? I think the earlier the better, right?
You
We can
sure?
discuss
Yeah,
this
I
for
mean,
a few
just-
weeks.
For parents' sake and staffing and yes.
All right, so I've heard there's some pros and some cons, there are some concerns. Do I need to make an actual resolution or
I think
we just
a
strong poll?
I think a strong poll.
I didn't have a question, but maybe a comment. If we're going to draw poll, most comment mostly. I hear you on, is it the perfect time to do it? Maybe not, but I have several thoughts on that. One, which would have been great to do this a long time ago. And two, this is going to be funded right now, 75% by state aid. So we're going to be leaving the money on the table. And sometimes when you're making a lot of transition, to add this in, it's almost like Joe adding, okay, we got more kids in the first grade, we got to add 2 classes. It's a little different than that, but I'm sure as educators, it's not outside their realm of, something totally new. Sounds like Margaret has dealt with this in the past. So I'm confident that they'll get through it, and to leave the money on the table for something that we could really benefit from, I'd like to see it happen sooner rather than later. I agree with you. There's no great, this isn't a great time, but at the same time, that's how things go in life. A lot of times it's not an easy time, but life goes on and we need to move forward. Can't keep pushing off, or you find out it's 20 years later again and we haven't done it. That's just my thought.
You have anything? Yeah, I know, everybody asked all the good questions. I don't really have anything to say. I think pre-K would be a fabulous opportunity. We've been talking about this for a very long time. Those of us who've been on board have been talking about it for a very, very long time. So I would be in favor of moving ahead next year. But I need to know how the rest of you guys feel. So all in favor of one more discussion?
I was not prepared to vote on this, to be totally transparent. I'm very anxious about Princeton plan. I'm a young mom. And I don't think that I can do this right now. I think I need to see a year of smooth transition. I can't believe I'm saying that because I really love UPK. But I don't think I can vote right now on this in favor of it.
All right, so how many of us are in favor of moving ahead with pre-K next year? And against? All right, so it looks like we move forward. We got 4 yes, 2 no. All right, thank you very much, and we look forward to a successful implementation. That brings us to our presentation.
Well, Ally and Alexis, I appreciate both of your opinions, but yeah, thank you.
All right, so that brings us to our presentations and discussions. And the first one up, thank you for being so patient. The Henhood Free Library has their budget, appears on our ballot every year, and they're here to present their budget.
You folks have a lot on your plate. Who's actually flies on the wall. Anyway, President Abraham, Mr. Hochreiter, members of the board and administrators. My name is Phil Brandon. I am president of the Board of Trustees of the Hendrick Hudson Free Library. And I'm here tonight along with Library Director Jill Davis, who you probably know, as well as fellow board members, Kevin Quigley, and Richard Al, and Cindy Knapp. We are here to present our proposed budget for fiscal 2022-2023 and request that it be included as a proposition on the ballot presented to the public on May 17, 2022. Our mission is to be the community destination for social, cultural, and lifelong learning for those of all ages and stages. It says it right there on our website. We see it every day. Since the beginning of the global pandemic, your library has worked hard to provide the services and programs everyone depends on, including access to books, periodicals, movies, music, and art exhibits, plus a wide range of programs, virtual when necessary, and a growing list of services. The public health crisis has made delivering on those promises difficult. The change of the pilot fund will make it even harder. Despite these obstacles, we always strive to be more and do more for more of our patrons. We describe the effort to deliver more than you expect of a library as beyond words. For example, did you know you can apply for or renew your passport at the library? Need a document notarized? Notary public service is available. You can purchase your Easy Pass at the library. You can reserve family museum passes for places including Storm King Art Center, the Museum of Natural History, and the Metropolitan Museum of Art, as well as a number of other area museums and institutions. Patrons can reserve a private work-study space or a larger conference room. We have Fire Sticks you can check out to access streaming services. There is a projector and screen or a GoPro video camera available, even a popcorn machine. So that's it. Your library must always be safe, secure, and comfortable. Though often logistically difficult, necessary maintenance and infrastructure upgrades have continued to be performed. These include replacing the hot water heater and boilers, very sexy, repairing and replacing all sidewalks and walkways, installing outdoor Wi-Fi units, repairs to the sprinkler system, creation of a patio for outdoor programs, installation of additional security cameras. And then we have two projects that are in the planning stages right now. One, building a pergola, which is a roofed open air structure for outdoor programs and events. We are exploring the addition of an electric vehicle charging station to further our strategic goal of being a leader in sustainability. Over the past year, the library continued to offer programs directed at all ages and interests. In 2021, 587 programs were offered, attended by over 7,500 patrons. Our children's department offered 306 programs with 3,128 in attendance. Our adult and teen services held 281 programs with 4,405 attendees. About 50% of all these programs in 2021 were either virtual or held outdoors. This included programs held on the front lawn, like our very popular coffee house concerts, in case you've ever been to one. Our end-of-life book collection, which allowed residents to bring us their old books for recycling. And the county shredding truck, which is always well received. And take note, the sure I can trust the next visit on April 30th. Just in case. Cooperation is important to us. We are happy that our partnership with the school district is once again moving forward. The after-school homework help program restarted in February after a 2-year pandemic hiatus. We have begun hosting district meetings. We are pleased to have the Board of Education meeting back in our facility in April. Also in April, we'll be hosting the district art show. We will be lending our space for kindergarten screening, which with our giant trees, a lot of fun. We are constantly devising ways that we can work together to serve district residents and their families. Our doors are always open to new ideas. Seamless integration with the Westchester Library System makes the Hendrick Hudson Free Library part of a resource that extends far beyond its walls. It ensures access to a robust countywide circulation network for both physical and electronic books. It provides a high level of IT support made more affordable by economies of scale. Nurturing and growing these programs, services, and relationships will take hard work and continued support going forward. Our proposed budget for the upcoming fiscal year reflects a commitment to our mission and recognizes our responsibility to be good stewards of the public funding that we receive. In response to the challenges we all face, the Hendrick Hudson Free Library 2022-2023 budget proposal is 3.57% lower in total than the 2021-2022 budget. Keep in mind that the changing of the pilot fund contribution means an anticipated loss as of now of over $200,000 in annual revenue. This shortfall is being addressed through a combination of numerous belt tightening measures plus the contribution of over $90,000 from the library's reserve fund. The proposed budget request includes a tax levy increase of 4.34%, which is a $50,000 increase over the 2021-2022 levy request. The average taxpayer in the town of Cortland will see an annual increase of $8.88 per thousand of assessed value, and Peekskill taxpayers will see an annual increase of $2.73 per thousand of assessed value. For the average taxpayer living in the town of Cortland, this means library services will cost approximately $222 per year. And in Peekskill, that number would be $126. The past 2 years have presented once-in-a-lifetime challenges. The Hendrick Hudson Free Library has met the moment through flexibility, creativity, and dedication. We look forward to better times ahead and hope to remain the go-to resource we have always been, enhancing the lives of all. We appreciate the opportunity to present the library's proposed budget and request that it be included as a proposition on the May 17th, 2022 ballot. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The library is so essential to our community. It's one of our hubs, and our collaborative relationship has always been greatly appreciated. I'm a frequent library patron myself and appreciate all of the services and the new offerings that you guys have been providing. Libraries are an amazing institution that change over time based on what the community needs. So well worth the price as far as I'm concerned.
That's how I got hurt.
So can I have a motion to include the Henhead Free Library proposed budget on our ballot in May? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you so much for coming out this evening, and we'll see you in a few weeks.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. That will bring us to our budget review.
Our first presentation is a shorter one. Enrique is giving an update on our budget, where it stands in terms of expense and revenue, and some changes that may have occurred over the last number of weeks.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm so impressed with the art, these artists from the middle school and high school. So we really don't see the difference. Both the middle school and the high school have great art. So why don't we move on? Today is going to be very quick. It's just a budget update. In the budget update, there's three parts. TRS originally was 10% of the salary of teachers and administrators. Now that increased to 10.29%, which represents an increase of $100,000 in our budget. There's a reduction in the workers' comp premium. Originally, I thought that in January that we won't have enough money with the settlement with the teachers. So I asked the workers' comp to send us this year money from our excess funds. And given the fact that we settle in a favorable way, I didn't need to use that money. So I'm using it for next year. So that's a reduction of $75,000. And then third, we have one teacher in the high school that Joe told me yesterday that we don't need to replace. So instead of paying an $80,000 reduction, is the full amount of $140,000, more or less. Next. So here you can see the numbers at the beginning of January. We had a budget. I cannot see from here. These are too many numbers.
Here.
Usually I can see from there. Now it's too much. Thank you. In January 20, I said that our budget will be between 85.1 and 86.6. Then, if you remember in February, due to the fact that they increased our health insurance premium from 6 to 8%, I increased it a little bit on the bottom line. It stayed like that. With these new numbers, we have some increases in some places and on other ones, but I still believe that our percent increase in our budget will be between 2.1 and 2.7, closer to the 2.7. Our preliminary tax levy originally was between 3.5% and 4.9% increase. Then we got good news from the state. We got more money in state aid, so we came down to 3.5% to 4.1%. After reviewing how we're doing this year, I think that we're going to be closer to 3.5%. It's been a difficult year economically for the country, for the community. So I've been trying hard to reduce the tax levy for the community. So my belief is that we're going to be around 3.4% in the higher number of the 3.2 to 3.4, but way below the 4.9 or 4.1 that I was expecting a month ago. Here you can have our preliminary budget. Next one, please. Yeah. Again, very little has changed there. The only portion that has changed is that our fund balance, I'm increasing it from 2.75 to $3.5 million. And then you can see our proposed budget to be 2.8. Our tax levy increased about 3.2. Our tax cap, that really doesn't matter for us because we will never increase our tax 15.2%, but I still have to report it and show it to the community. The only unfortunate part is that if the budget goes down, we need to talk about $1,600,000. Next, please. This is a very basic preliminary tax rate for the average house. Many years ago, we established that the average assessed value in our district is about $7,000 of assessed value. So the start estimated for the town of Portland is 1,400. That means that the state picks up out of the $7,700 of assessed value, the state picks up 1,400 for town of Portland, and basically the same for the city of Fiscal. So last year, our tax rate was 1,121. This year, we expect for town of Portland to be 1,156. Last year, that house that had in town of Portland that had an assessed value of 7,700 paid 8,633. This year, it's going to pay about $8,909. And I still don't have the equalization rate, so I'm basing these numbers of last year equalization rate. The equalization rate can move the city of Fiscal versus the town of Portland tax rate in higher or lower. And for the city of Fiscal, a house of 7,700. Last year they paid $4,600. This year we paid $4,800, an increase of $176. We have a long night. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. But it's a quick review of where we are and where we have been.
Thank you, Enrique. Does anybody have any questions about this before we move on? All right, so that will take us to our program budget presentation and curriculum instruction.
Sure.
Oh, okay, we'll switch it around and we're going to do our technology program budget first.
Well, welcome, Benita. This is Benita Joy. She joined our district back in November 8th. And has certainly hit the ground running. She joins us from Mount Pleasant, where she was in a similar position. Different district, same stuff. And,
Same position. Yes.
same position. So she's going to walk us through the technology budget. This is her first budget with us, so I know Enrique is going to jump in on some of the items just from a historical standpoint. But Benita, if you want to walk us through this, and then we'll get to some questions at the end.
Thank you. My first presentation, and thank you for all of your support. It's been great working in this district for the last 5 months. So you will see the budget goals for next year's proposed budget is mostly built on keeping our current infrastructure and our initiatives in place and adding more security and safety for our staff and students, and also more redundancy for our network and infrastructure. For the last 5 years, there's a snapshot of what we've been spending our lease money, or most of our technology hardware budget, and also the lease that we have every year. This summer, we're going to be concentrating on the high school teacher stations, workstations, and desktops. All of our 3 elementary schools are due for a interactive panel replacements. Our middle school, there's 2 computer labs that we still have, Project Legal Day computer lab, and also our Photoshop computer lab. Because of COVID, we've been put behind on our replacement cycle on desktops and computers in the classroom. So that's why we're doing some high school, actually all of high school, and 2 of the computer labs at the high school. The next slide, I wanted to, this is not something I know usually you see on the budget presentations, but I wanted to show you before COVID or 2019-20 is when we entered the COVID year. You can see how many helpless tickets that we created compared to what we closed last year, doubled. And the last column is actually the projection of, as of December, how many tickets that were opened and closed. So we're anticipating definitely a lot more than 10,000 by the end of the year. The hardware budget is usually used for emergency, or any emergencies like a smart panel going out and it's not under warranty, replacing that. Or if we had a server, we had an instance this year with the UPS going out and it wasn't budgeted for this, an emergency replacement that we had to do. Most of our planned replacements are through our lease, through the lease that we get every year. So the hardware budget is actually going down by about 20,000 because when I'm putting the lease together, I'm actually anticipating and putting a little bit buffer on building in that extra computers that we would need based on what I'm seeing on this year's budget. I'll keep going and maybe the questions could be at the end. Contractual is the biggest line item that technology has. This is where all of our contracts are. The main one with First Light or Best Web, our ISP, our phones, our fax services. The technology support staff that we have is through EduTech. So you will see that there's an increase for one engineer on that line item because of the helpless tickets you already saw. At the same time, we have a lot of NWA 2D compliant. We have a NIST framework that we are adopting this year, which is a national standard for cybersecurity. You've probably heard of a lot of, cyber attacks, malware, phishing attacks that are happening around our districts. So this is really to support that infrastructure and making sure our infrastructure is safe. So there is an increase of an engineer that I'm asking for. There's a lot of cybersecurity programs that we have that supports the infrastructure and the safetiness of our district. So that's also in the contractual. We have the backup and recoveries line item there, our student information system, our inventory system, and our fleet of printer support is all under the contractual. So you see a little bit of an increase there because of what we are adding with the EduTech staff and also increasing our security on our infrastructure. The next one is the software budget. You see a little bit of a decrease, but really not as decrease. I'm transferring that money to contractual because we have GM software that supports our Mac Apple fleet. That's actually not an instructional software, it's an administrative software, so I moved that line item to contractual, so that's where you see that decrease. Goal seats, and I know Lyric is the Lower Hudson Regional Information Center. Lyric is kind of like PNW BOCES, but the Southern Westchester BOCES. Lyric offers a lot of the technology model schools program where we've been going to, actually yesterday we were at a STEAM play date with Meg, Kathy Holtzman, one of our other STEAM teachers next year, Margaret and I went there. They opened up the model schools and hope that they will join them next year. I've been part of model schools for my last 20 years of career at Carmel and Mount Pleasant. So a lot of technology workshops, a lot of districts that you work with and what other districts do. So you always have that relationship that you can build there. They offer a lot of training classes, a lot of conferences that we can participate. So the BOCES increase is really for, other than the contractual increases, the Model Schools Program and the Tech Leadership Institute that we're signing up for. E-supplies budget is actually decreasing. It's actually decreasing quite a bit because I've talked about the 3 elementary schools that are getting new interactive panels. The installation for those panels usually get paid out of the supplies budget. So we're paying hopefully this year out of our current budget. So that's where you see that decrease in supplies line item. So again, the final line item is our lease details. So I talked about how we're kind of put behind because of COVID with our refresher cycle every 5 years. So next year or this summer, refresher cycle is going to be our high school, all the workstations, the middle school, 2 computer labs, and the 3 elementary school interactive panels. So overall, my budget is actually increasing by 9.1%. So that's it. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Questions? Just as a point of clarification, so under Lyric, the Model Schools Program, is that like professional development? Am I understanding that right?
It's it is professional development for our teachers because we have tech coaches in the district. Even the technology retreat, I know Bill was there for the technology retreat. One of the things that we constantly hear is our tech coaches are not trained to turnkey the training. So they're learning on their own, but this would be an opportunity for them to try out new technology. Like we saw a lot of new technology yesterday that we usually wouldn't get to see that through P&W BOCES. So, and you also get to work with a lot of these Southern Westchester BOCES area in a collaborative setting. So it is the PD, but also a lot of keynote speakers come in and talk to us about it. We attended an ActiveCon that talks about, how we use our space that we utilize. So it's actually bringing us to kind of like the 21st century, what everybody is doing. And instead of bringing in a speaker for ourselves, like the cost is like $3,000 to $5,000 to bring somebody in. This is like that collaborative model where all the districts go there and we get to attend that conferences.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Bill.
I think this one is more for Enrique. I know I've asked this on other presentations that we seem to be going over 2% on several of these presentations, and this one more than by a little percentage-wise. Is the whole budget still pulling together, including? We keep seeing large, but when we do the summary, it doesn't seem as nearly as big as the presentations increases.
I agree. What I showed you before includes the $2,106,000. We have huge increases like this one, but on the other hand, we have huge decreases like debt, ERS, but maybe in our next board meeting, I'll bring you a summary of the biggest increases and decreases that you can, like that you will be able to see it and feel comfortable.
How they offset each other.
I understand your point. But all the numbers that you're seeing are baked into my final number. But I understand your point because we've seen a couple of large increases. What I'm going to do next time is bring you, I don't know, the 10 largest increases and decreases so you can see how one offsets the other.
Okay. Thank you, Enrique.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I have one question. So the contractual details, this seems to be the largest driver for our budget increase for technology. Just to clarify once again, most of that increase is for another engineer, is that correct?
There is engineer, but also under cybersecurity and data privacy. We currently have a network where students are bringing in their own devices, but we haven't really announced you can bring in your devices. So at the high school level, I've been talking to Mr. Mackin about our upper grade students, the ability for them to bring their own devices, because the students, when they get to 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, they have their device. Chromebook is not enough, right? That's all we can supply. But I want them to start, if they're engineering students, I want them to bring their laptop or their MacBook. So in order to support that structure and properly announce that we can support your BYOD, I want to make sure our network, you cannot just bring in your laptop and just connect to a port and have an issue. So that's the security that we're building in. So there is quite a bit of increase in the cybersecurity area because of we're strengthening our infrastructure.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you very much.
All right, thank you for your support.
That will bring us to our curriculum and instruction budget presentation.
Good evening. Give Greg a minute to bring this up. I brought my presentation in case it's too small. Okay, so we are going to talk about curriculum instruction, how we fund curriculum instruction, professional development, how we fund that, and then staffing. All right, first slide. So we're going to start with some highlights from this year. We break it out by division. So this year in the elementary division, we introduced bridge classrooms. That was a part of what we used some of our federal funds for. We identified grade levels in some of the schools that we were very worried about. And we created an opportunity for students in those grades to have a more intense hit in ELA. So they go to, they're partnered with another teacher. That teacher pulls out a subset of students, the ones who are struggling the most. They pre-teach some of their ELA work so that kids feel like they know a little bit about it when it comes to them the next day or so. But then they also do the AIS work to catch them up in their reading skills. We've done that in 2nd and 3rd grade and 4th grade at BV, and we've done it in 2nd and 3rd and 5th grade at Frank G. And it's been very successful. I've had good conversations with teachers. Our kids are making progress. The principals are happy. So it's been a very good use of the funds. It will go away next year. The teachers who are in the bridge program are not, will go back to positions that they had. In 2 or 3 cases, they're reading teachers. In 1 case, it's a classroom teacher. So that's been a very good experience. In 4th grade, lost track with COVID when New York State actually rolled out the New York State Next Gen Science Standards, and we've certainly postponed that rollout now twice due to COVID. But this year was the 4th grade's year to roll out their new curriculum, so we did experience the new units in grade 4. 5th grade is piloting in this year, and they will come on board next year. It's not an additional cost, it's just a new Science 21 program. In the region, we work with BOCES, and our teachers work with the BOCES science folks to actually write this curriculum. So we write it, we pilot it, we edit it, we revise it, and we're very pleased with how that works. We also brought in a phonics spelling vocabulary program that will go K-5 called Words Their Way. Words Their Way is not a new program. It's been around a long time with a lot of success. We piloted several approaches. We started piloting the year before COVID, so 18-19. We continued the pilot in 19-20 until we were closed. And then we met to make some decisions, and we brought that in on a rolling basis. this year to try to allow classroom teachers to catch their breath a little bit. We had a cohort come out in September, another cohort come on board in December, and the last cohort will come on board in May. So in September, all students K-5 will experience the Works Their Way curriculum. There's some internal coaching going on around this, and we're very excited to be using this new piece. In addition to that, every school district is required to have a support system called response to intervention. And the region, more than the region, really nationally, that terminology has changed to what we now call MTSS because we love initials. And MTSS is a multi-tiered support system. The real advantage of taking the lens of MTSS is that it allows us to also look at kids who need to be enriched. So RTI really focused us a little bit more on kids who need remediation and support. By moving to an MTSS lens, it also allows us to look at who's above grade level and how can we continue to stretch those students as well. To do this work, we have leaned on a database, if you will, that collects information about our students when we meet with concerns or celebrations. And that follows the students through the grades. It's very helpful as kids move through the system for the middle school people to just tap into that database and say, oh, what's happened to Margaret these past few years? What have we tried that's been successful? What have we tried that hasn't worked? And it allows us to see progress or sometimes lack thereof as they move through the system. So this year, bringing in Branching Minds was a K-5 initiative. We've been doing a lot of work, especially with our AIS teachers, hoping that they will be a major support system in the schools next year when we ask our classroom teachers to come on board. In middle school, some of the new things that happened this year, like our fourth grade, we also have updates to science K-12, but in middle school this year, it was seventh grade's turn to come on board with new curriculum aligned to the new standards. And seventh grade has new units of study focused on both earth and physical science. I hear that's going very well. It's a very hands-on program. You heard Meg talk a little bit earlier about Science 21 and the STEM process. The new science standards are very STEM-based. They are very engineer-focused. So we see a lot of project-based learning, thank you, for coming into our schools through that particular curriculum, and the kids are really enjoying it. Sixth grade at the middle school also had an opportunity to do a math pilot this year. So the math program that we were using, I believe, was Saxon Math. Our subscription to that program ended coming into this school year, and we really discussed two options. Option one was continuing the math program that exists K-5 because they do have a middle school component, or looking at what is being used 7, 8, and through some of the math in the high school, and then just being the sixth grade version of that. So they interestingly asked if they could look at both, and they have been looking at both, and they're, the math leader at the middle school, Christina Obowetsky, is very talented and has been working with the two math teachers to step through that work. They're close to making a decision, if not already made one, and so we will know what we're purchasing for next year. At the high school, we are very excited, and we've kind of been leaning in a little bit on the work that's happening both regionally and in the state. So New York State for a number of years has been in the planning stages of offering what they call a seal of civic engagement. In an effort to get our kids to be more understanding of the way our government works, both locally and nationally, there's an exciting opportunity for kids to engage in learning and also experiential opportunities as they get to middle school and high school. It is not a small undertaking, and so many districts said, we'll sit out 21 and 22 and see what other schools have been doing with it. In our region, the North Salem School District and the Harrison School District have opted to pilot this year. I just had a conversation with our BOCES, Putnam, Northern Westchester, and they are preparing a regional conversation about the progress that they've made and some of the exciting opportunities that have come their way with kids. I've been talking quite a bit with Andrew Lupian, who is our social studies leader at the high school. We're excited about this opportunity. We are planning to jump into the water next year. We'll get a team together that will look at both middle school and high school, but I also would like elementary to be involved in that conversation because there is definitely a place for them in part of this process moving forward. So we'll be hearing much more about that in the coming months as we put our plan together and we share with you what we think that could look like for our students. And then there are two items there that belong really with PPS, and sorry, Lisa is not with us tonight. Joe wants to explain what supplement and mental health support is.
Yeah, Lisa mentioned these in her presentation, so I won't take long. The supplemental period with for students with an IEP at the high school, that basically they have a home base. If you think of the old homeroom model at the middle school, but more of an academic focus. And then additional mental health support. We've been adding to our mental health team at the high school. And QCARD is another one of those acronyms that support our staff and support students, especially when we're doing threat assessments and meeting with them in large and small groups. And again, she had commented on her excitement about the progress on the during her presentation.
Okay, so priorities for next year, and you'll hear a lot of the same things we just talked about. At elementary, Eureka Squared. So Eureka Math has been our math program for many years. It's an offshoot of the original modules that New York State shared when Common Core updated. They broke off from that and continue to develop their math programs as a separate entity. They have an update to the program called Eureka Squared. We did look at the program. I understand from our teachers that it answers many of the questions and frustrations that they have experienced teaching, mostly around being more kid-friendly in terms of visuals for children, things literally like spacing on a page, which can be very cumbersome for little guys if there's not enough space to work, to show your work, so to speak. They're very pleased with the changes that have been made. So we will be ordering the update this year instead of staying with the current program. Again, it's not an additional, it's just the new program that we'll bring on board. They also have a digital suite that the teachers have expressed an interest in, which offers some videos for support when kids are not quite sure what we did with long division today. They can go back to a video at on their own time and say, oh, right, that's what I was supposed to do. Probably will help parents as well, I would imagine. So there are some opportunities there that we're exploring with the company. Words Their Way again, it's just a final version. We'll be in full, everybody up to speed and ready to go in September. All materials ordered. It's a very differentiated program, so kids move at their own pace. There's an assessment that happens several times a year that guides teachers to know what stage of spelling and phonics and vocabulary development their kids are in, and then the activities that support that work. And you heard men talk about STEMing a special twice in a cycle. We were very excited yesterday when we saw some opportunities. As we were taking in the learning, we were noting the connections to our science program and how one would definitely support the other. So that will take place next year. Everybody is really interested in seeing where that could go. Middle school. So next year is 8th grade's turn at the New York State Next Gen Science Standards, and they will be working with a new curriculum completely focused on life science. 6th grade will have finalized, I believe I think I heard a rumor that we're going with eMath, which is a wonderful secondary program that, as I said, is used 7, 8, 9. I'm not sure how far through the high school they've taken that work, but it's an outstanding opportunity. And we will actually get a committee and get Seal of Civic Engagement off the ground. I hope at another time, maybe even before the end of this year, I'll do a presentation and explain to you what that requires of students in order to participate and the kinds of opportunities we can offer them locally. Okay. So let's talk about how we pay for all of this good stuff. There are two main funding sources in curriculum and instruction. The first is the federal funds, or the title grants as we call them. And I've listed them there for you. You will notice that the allocation each year differs. And you'll also notice that each title addresses a very specific audience. So Title I focuses only on at-risk students. So we identify kids who are going to AIS math or ELA, even social emotional needs come under Title I. Title II is staff professional development, where a lot of our consultant costs come from. Title III focuses on second language learners and immigrants. And Title IV is kind of a combination of technology, health and social emotional learning, and extended learning opportunities. And then another code that we use that is provided based on population enrollment is the New York State textbook funding allotment. So if you look across, you'll see what we received in the past 2 years, what we project without carry forward. So you are allowed to carry forward money from year to year in the grant if for some reason you don't spend it. So if you think about 1920, where we shut down in March, we had an awful lot of money planned for activities, for salaries, that some of which never got used. Thankfully, we were told when you come back in 2021, you can roll that money forward. We're not going to force you to leave it on the table. You're allowed to roll forward 15% of your total allocation. You can every 3 years exceed that amount, but you have to send them information with extenuating circumstances as to why we're asking for that to happen. So we received a communique just the other day that good news is that the federal government has substantially increased funding to all of the title funds. Of course, I don't know what that looks like as it flows through the state and then down to each school district. Allocations don't come out until probably around June. Our budget has to be put together usually by early September for this coming year. So we'll see what we're able to do. Again, it's wonderful to have that money. It's also a little scary to never know exactly the amount that you're going to end up receiving. But I will say that we make very good use of the funding that we are provided with. The other source of funding is, of course, the district budget. So if you look at those descriptions, you can also see that there's a zero increase across the board in all of those budget lines. Okay. A little bit more detail about exactly what we do with that money on the next slide. Title I funds things like after school or summer AIS, both reading, math, and ENL at all schools. Summer Kinder Camp, the program I spoke about earlier. We use that for AIS reading teachers and math teachers for any PD or additional materials we might want purchased for them. Anything that the students might need as they go to those services. It supports our district RTI/MTSS. The database that I talked about comes out of this. We're also able to offset some of our salaries for the teachers who deliver AIS reading and math. In Title II, again, this is the professional development grant, so our consultants have come out of this. We are able to use it also if we have teachers in the district who serve a staff developing role in their role as a teacher or a teacher leader. Title III, after school for ENL, summer school support for ENL, teacher professional development and materials, and also through the immigrant grant, which is the most unpredictable because the definition of an immigrant is very precise and it doesn't mean you'll have the same number of students every year, they age out. So an immigrant is considered someone who was born outside the United States and has not attended a United States school for more than 3 years. So you can imagine as the kids get beyond the 3, they drop off that allocation amount. But that focuses a lot on pre-college, so college visits can be covered under this, opportunities to meet with vocational providers, our trade unions. We're having good conversations with the guidance department at the high school about how to make use of some of that for the students' opportunities post-high school. Title IV, we spent this past year of really finishing off acquisition of Chromebooks, and we also set aside some money for the Tech Coaches Professional Development and a math program that we purchased at elementary. And then the textbook code covers curriculum materials that are considered non-consumable. We think mostly that of traditionally what a textbook is. So a science textbook or a social studies textbook. Textbook money will also fund novels if that's part of their main instruction. And so in our ELA classrooms, that is absolutely the case. It doesn't fund things like workbooks where kids will write in it and then we need a new one next year. That comes out of a different code. On the local side of the district budget, some of the things that come out of the items that I shared a few slides earlier, in service for teachers, extended year curriculum projects. Every summer, we have teachers working to revise curriculum units or perhaps writing some new curriculum. So they'll propose something to me relatively soon, actually, in May and June, and then we determine which projects are moving forward and how many hours and how many teacher collaborators there will be. So that salary funding comes out of there. We also pay for our Science 21 program, our K-5 social studies database, which also comes out of Putnam, Northern Westchester, BOCES, and is also collaboratively developed by teachers in the region. And then we send all of our instructional leaders, so grade level leaders, if there is a specific collegial circle over at BOCES, the science and social studies people go and they meet with their colleagues from the regions that participate in BOCES to exchange ideas, to learn what's working. We talked about this a little bit yesterday about learning what other districts are doing with STEAM and elementary. So certainly Meg and her colleagues will have an opportunity next year to have those conversations as well. There are always content area workshops. So I think BOCES throughout the state, they probably all have a little bit of a specialty, if you will, as Benita shared earlier with Southern Westchester BOCES and the RIC. I think Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES has a curriculum reputation. And so we have fabulous opportunities for teachers to learn coming out of there. We very often send people to either continued or one-day opportunities. They've done a wonderful job of making opportunities virtual during COVID, and we've taken advantage of many of them. Our administrators also do their lead evaluator training through BOCES. We have brought in consultants, our strategic planning group, et cetera. Our probationary teachers, as part of their induction program, experience 2 courses that come through BOCES COSER funding, Skillful Teacher and Making Student Thinking Visible. And then we always have an opportunity to send teachers to regional conferences now that we're back live again. Some of them have been virtual and we've attended, but people are starting to now go out again to these conferences. So the New York State Social Studies conference is one that we usually attend. There are reading conferences that people will go to and represent us and then bring back ideas and turnkey them. So those are some of the things that we use for funding. Those are some of the programs. I don't know if you want me to pause and he's giving me keep going. All right, improving our practice through professional learning. Professional learning in the district is designed based on needs improvement analysis and through feedback from staff via our teacher leaders. So in 21-22, we did training on Words Their Way, training on branching minds, continued ELA coaching at all 3 schools in reading and writing K-5. In 6-12, we work with a different consultant who's providing professional development on classroom instruction and also classroom design, physical design. Our music department does a wonderful job of bringing in folks to work with them in a myriad of areas, and they certainly have experienced that opportunity again this year. Our E&L teachers also work with someone who's very renowned in the region, so we periodically touch base with Dr. Cloud and get refreshed. And now we turn to people, our most important investment. You can see some pictures of teaching there. We have really an outstanding group of teachers, K-12, really always eager and willing to participate in a conversation about moving their work forward. And I personally am very grateful for that. Student enrollment. If we look at this slide, we've been tracking this through the years. You can see on the left to 2013, we had 2,599 students. In the year 2022, we will have 2,088 students. So that's a significant drop over the years. We are not the only district. It's a regional experience that people are seeing declining enrollment. Let's turn the page and zero in on elementary. Okay, so again, here's a picture of our elementary enrollment. We combined all 3 schools and show it by grade level here. You can see where we were, where we are in the yellow. 975, up slightly from the 2021 year. And then we are projecting right now to drop to 941 in the coming year. And I asterized the kindergarten number because again, that is the one we unfortunately are least comfortable with while we're waiting for folks to register. So if you're out there with a kindergarten student, please register. Orientation for parents is in April. We don't want you to miss that by waiting until June or July. All right, next page is elementary staffing, and we added at the last minute a comparison of next year in the pink to this year in the blue, and then we showed you by each building what that looks like. And you can just look across. We are now familiar with the 53 current staffing dropping to 46. And then we broke it out for you in some of the special areas and support areas. We currently have 7 AIS reading teachers at elementary. Next year, we're projected to have 6. 1 reading teacher will be moving to the middle school. So it's not a cut of staff, but a movement. AIS math will remain 3, 1 in each school. Special ed teachers, that consists of the ICT teachers, resource room teachers, ABC teachers, 1211 teachers. So that's where we are right now at 18.2, 17.5 next year. I believe that is the result of some scaling K3 and then 4, 6 maybe, I'm not sure. Again, I would defer to Lisa if she were here. Art stays steady at 2. Music goes from 5 to 4. The part of that is that there isn't travel anymore. We will have 2 music teachers at Furnace Woods, the 4-5 building, where band and orchestra lessons will take place. We have 1 teacher at the K1 building, 1 music teacher at 2-3. The teacher that you see as a reduction is going to the middle school to take the retirement that happened this year. So again, there's a cut in terms of eliminating staff. It's a repositioning of staff. And PE will remain steady at 3. Library media goes from 2 to 3 as it absorbs the Horizons position and gets folded into library media STEM. We are not, please don't think that we're giving up on enrichment. When you heard me say the Horizons position folds in, we are going to once again go back to the enrichment for all model that we were using before COVID. We'll be talking with the 3 principals about scheduling the WIN block, which will give us an opportunity to give kids a chance at enrichment outside of the curriculum area, as well as kids who need support within content areas. So that will, that's a model that's very popular, not just at elementary, but at secondary also. There's a block of time set aside every day where an entire grade is brought together and then divvied up based on the skills that they either need remediation in or by some opportunities to stretch them. That will rotate through ELA and math, so kids will get an opportunity. Perhaps I might need more help in ELA than I do in math, so I might have an opportunity for some math enrichment, and I might get some extra support in ELA. ENL is 2, and there's an asterisk for next year. That's an enrollment-driven program, and I'm right now looking at the enrollment with the ENL teachers because that will roll forward. So we're looking to see 2 things happen. Kids roll forward, and then kids take the nicest lap this spring. You can score out of ENL. If you do so on the nicest lap, then you drop out of ENL services. You get support, but not necessarily the service that you got when you were still in the program. And that changes the way you are serviced in terms of minutes per day, which is what the Part 154 regs are for ENL. So depending on the level, there's 5 proficiency levels. Depending on the level of proficiency, it's X amount of minutes per week. So to say I have 3 kids in ENL means really relatively nothing. I really need to know what their level of proficiency is to be able to determine how much FTE I need to provide that service in that school. So we're gonna sit down probably in the next couple of weeks before the break and take a look at where we are, where we think we might be after the nicest lat, and then again, kindergarten is always the unknown. So as we register, there will be some initial screening done on the students so we can get a better picture of that. Okay, so let's continue on. One more slide on elementary. This is the class size projections for next year. And we've shown this before in a slightly different format for each grade level. That is the projected size. We're very secure about the numbers for 1 through 5. These are the sections that we thank the board for allowing us to put forward because they do step aside of the policy right now in order to allow us to roll Princeton Plant forward and have a lower class size. And those are indeed lower class sizes and nice averages on the grade. Middle school. So again, we start by looking at enrollment historically. So we have 3 years of history, the current year, and the projected enrollment. Again, you see a slight increase in 21-22, and then a drop in 22-23. That's just the numbers. Let's look at the next page where we look at staffing. And again, we're looking at 3 years running, show you the enrollment, 487,504 dropping down, classroom teachers. So the staffing stays relatively steady in the middle school projected for next year. And then we're going to look at average class size. This was something we started to look at last year for middle school. So you see what 21-22, 21.1 right now in 6th grade, 19.4, 22.5, the projected slight drop off, except in 7th grade. And again, as the cohorts roll through, we try to update the numbers as recently as we can, because believe it or not, through the year, kids leave and kids come. So the starting number that we had in September always varies a little bit. And now we're going to move on to the high school. And again, high school starts with historical information, what enrollment has looked at. You can see the totals at the bottom. This year they had 686, down from the year before, and next year they'll go up slightly from this year. The next page again shows you the same type of staffing model, 3 years running, was the number of students, and then classroom staffing and special area folks addressing those concerns. And then the next slide, this year, someone asked if we could look at the average class size at the high school. It's a little bit more complicated than it is at the lower levels. But we did look at an overall class size, number of students and number of sections that exist at the high school. So the average was 14 students in a section. And then we also looked at it by department, and there you can see the class sizes ranging anywhere from 12 to 22. Last page is the retirement update. We have 10 retirements this year, and you can see the positions that are there. You'll notice 3 up from the bottom is the, I'm sorry, not 3 up from the bottom, 2 up from the bottom is the 712 science position that Enrique spoke about earlier. That's a physics position. So science is a content area that has separate certifications for each course. So biology, chemistry, physics, earth science, and this is a physics teacher that is retiring. And Mr. Mackin has said we don't need to replace this teacher. It can be reallocated across the other physics certification areas. We've already filled the K-12 music position with the elementary music teacher. And the rest of what's here remains true. It's posted right now internally. We have not gone out with it, but we will go out with it shortly on OMOS to see what is available. Okay. Questions? All right, I'm sure there are questions. Who would like to start?
I just have a question about the high school average class size. How, there's got to be like a reason in a way, because different, like English is a subject, but there's all different types of English classes. Is that how we get to, I mean, 12 children in an English class seems so awfully low. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, the first thing I can tell you is that contractually, there's a limit for the ELA teachers, because imagine grading essays and giving feedback to that many students. So they have a cap.
In high school?
And yes, on how many students that they can teach. It's very common. It's not a unique thing to Hudson, just because of the nature of that work. Again, if you looked at the course catalog, there are definitely some departments that have more offerings than others. There are some departments that have more electives than others. This was just how many sections are there in the science department, and then how many students. And am I right? Because it was Carmen actually that ran the program for us. Yeah. Ally?
Looking at the federal funding, historically, your estimates, like how close are you, after doing this for a couple of years? Are you pretty close?
We are pretty close. I think, as I said, the one thing that I just don't even think about is the immigrant funding, because I just put it aside and I plan for the Title III money alone. And then if the immigrant money comes through, it's a bonus, mostly that gets addressed at the high school level. But the others, yes, we have been pretty close. The past couple of years, I'll say Title II, probably, I would say maybe in the last 4 years, that took the biggest hit. And so I was very happy to see the news that there's a resupply of funding to those grants, because that's an important opportunity, certainly for us, and I'm sure for my colleagues across the region. So we're not too far off from where we've been.
So these numbers are on the conservative end and then always hoping for more.
Always.
Okay, thank you.
Lisa? In light of the conversation we had about pre-K, will the summer camp be running? Do you think there'll be need for that this summer?
I would think not, if we're going forward with pre-K. And this would be a challenging year as well, because the buildings are being prepped for a Princeton plan. So that would definitely be, and it would be really challenging to try to move that program for 4-year-olds to the middle school. We'd have to move furniture, but if we're going ahead with pre-K, which it appears we are, I would say that we would forego that opportunity and maybe think about doing some extra work with kids who might need some extra help.
Isn't the kinder camp based on need though?
Yeah.
And the pre-K is gonna be based on the lottery?
Yeah, and it could be that it's not the same kids. We won't know that until we're through with our screening. So probably by June, we'll have a better answer of both who's in the lottery and then who that we screened are we worried about. I don't know, Bill, if I can house it because of what's going on. So that's part of the problem. So, I mean, that'll be a conversation for us to have if we see that need with Anthony and his team to say, is there a spot where we think we can do this? Because remember, everybody is moving. All classrooms will be emptied and cleaned and then reloaded. So normally this is a program that ran at BV, only because the teacher who leads it teaches at BV. If we have space and we feel we have the need, and those are not kids that made the lottery, we certainly would want to look at it. I don't know if we can physically manage it. And we didn't do it last year because of COVID. We will definitely be on the lookout to see how that balances itself out.
I had 2 questions. Just to clarify, we are reducing a music teacher for elementary. Are we reducing any services, any music classes? For
No, we are not. So right now, the 4th and 5th grade has 2 music classes a week. One is general music, one is chorus. And then the students that are in band and orchestra have lessons. The economies of scale and going to Princeton plan means all of those students are now in one spot. So where you might have had to have 2 violas at BV and then 2 violas at Frank G and 1 viola at Furnace Woods, you now have the 5 violas together in one building. Those are no longer 3 separate lesson sections. They're all in one. So I believe, if I remember the draft of the schedule, there are 8 sections in 4th and 5th grade, which means there are 16 sections in a 36 section cycle for general music. So 16 from 36 means there are 20 sections available to each of the 2 teachers to do their lessons in. I do believe that math works out.
Thank you. And the other question is the middle school enrollment is going down, but we're not talking about reducing teams or anything like that at this point.
Correct. That would be over there.
Correct. We looked at it with the finance committee because we did look at that last year based on some resignations and retirements we had. And to be honest, the math just didn't work out. The class size increase would not be worth it. It does warrant a conversation perhaps in the future of looking at, the middle school bell schedule and how it's organized, because when you are organized by team, you're very staff heavy. Some schools have looked at not teaming in 8th grade or 7th grade or what have you. There are a lot of models out there that we could examine, but not for budget purposes.
Thank you. Jen, did you have any questions?
I didn't have a question or comment. I know we spoke about this previously. But instrument lessons, 4th and 5th only go once every 6-day cycle. And the economy of scale is great. I love that. I just want us to be really cognizant when we group instruments together that we're not having like 7, 8 instrument lessons in one single class. And then,
I can tell you that they will still plan to do violas, violins, that kind of thing.
right, but I mean, like, just say my daughter's like 2 5th graders, right? So there's 3, she has 3 kids in her trumpet class, right? Which, yeah, is maybe 4 okay, but at some point, an instrument class, when you only meet once every 6 days, is like 7, 8 is not. You're never going to keep kids engaged in instruments if we don't.
And I'm sure that Josh Cohen, who's the principal at 4 or 5, will engage in those conversations with both Doug and Mary Landry, who will be doing band and orchestra, and they'll figure out there are, I think there's plenty of opportunity there to create the optimal setting for those lessons.
Okay.
Sorry, I think I got a little confused. Bill, you were asking about kinder camp? You started that. So what is kinder camp and UPK? Like, I'm missing the connection between those 2 programs. Kinder camp is for children going into kindergarten, and UPK is for the preschool group that we're adding.
But they're pre-K students, so we have 2 reasons why we're struggling with that this year. One is because we're bringing UPK on board, and the second is because I don't know that I have building opportunity for it. We set aside the budget for it, but I'm not sure that I could say to the staff, I have 3 or 4 rooms that you can use at Frank G, and they'll be ready for you and not interfere with teachers setting up their program. Usually they start, I think, the first week in August, and they run for 3 weeks. I don't know that that's doable. That's a conversation that we have to have with Mr. Marini and his staff. And then that program will go away going forward.
Kinder camp, is going away.
Yeah. But we do have it in the Title I budget for this year because we didn't know what direction we were going in. It was easier to budget. It's easy to change the budget. It's just an amendment. So we budgeted for it, not knowing what was going to come our way.
So it's going away because of UPK?
Yes, it will become unnecessary. Bill brings up a good point. What do we do with kids who may be at risk, but maybe are not part of the lottery? And that's something that we'll have to figure out. How many kids is it? Do we run a program for 1 or 2 kids? I don't know. It's a pretty considerable program. We have OT/PT in that mix. We had, certainly over the time, we've had kids with special needs in the mix. So there are a lot of questions that remain. But again, we budgeted for it. We just don't know if we can actually do it.
How many kids would you say you had last summer, roughly?
We didn't do it last year because of COVID, and I don't think we did it the year before. So probably the last time we ran it, we usually run 2 classrooms. So I would say probably about 25 students between the 2 teachers. And then a full support staff works with them.
So it's not the entire incoming
Right.
125.
No, I know that.
Yeah.
So could we ever allot Title I money towards UPK?
Oh, I would love to. I've asked them this 1,000 ways. I will not give up asking them if I can do that, because it makes perfect sense to me. And it seemed to be a novel question to them. Could I combine those funds? Because I can combine Title I and Head Start. So I'm still nudging them along that line. If I can identify those students, and we do identify those students right now for AIS. So if I engage in the same identification process, can I use some of that title money?
Don't stop asking.
I won't.
All right, I think that's it. Thank you, everybody, for a very comprehensive presentation. That will bring us to our first audience comments section. I am going to read the brief comments instructions, since it is getting very late. To maintain an orderly meeting, each speaker should sign in with the district clerk prior to commenting. When called, each speaker should step up to the podium and state their name and affiliation, if applicable, prior to starting their comment. Letters, petitions, and other written material should be handed to the district clerk. Each speaker is permitted 3 minutes for their comments and must be recognized by the board president. All comments must be directed to the board. The board will listen to comments, but will not necessarily debate or discuss items. Excuse me. Operational matters will be directed to school administrators for handling. The board is not permitted to address personnel or individual matters in open session. The board may limit repetitive comments in order to give time to others wishing to speak, as well as to maintain meeting efficiency. And the board expects comments to be made without interference from the audience and in a civil manner. Thank you. Carmen, do we have speakers or agenda items?
We do. Our first speaker tonight is Kristen Earl.
So let's start with a smile. It's really nice to see 100% of most of the cases. So, it's a nice change in the last 2 years. Okay. The U.S. Surgeon General has issued a warning about the mental health of young people. 1 in 3 high school students reported persistent feelings of sadness or hopelessness in 2021. 1 in 3 adults reported symptoms of depression or anxiety. Sadly, our society heavily stigmatizes mental health, so these numbers are probably underreported. To me, these statistics indicate that regardless of my children's personal status, they will interact with students and teachers who are experiencing a mental health challenge while in your school system. And we need more than just 1 counselor for elementary school. We need a whole team of leaders. Chen Hud School District is morally obligated to create an environment of resilience and post-traumatic growth. Under the circumstances felt in our town, from the demolition of a nuclear power plant, the push to transition to great banding, and the ongoing economic and social emotional effects of COVID-19. Experiencing a global pandemic has affected every person of the population on some level. It is a community's duty to demand our public structures incorporate trauma-informed, resilience-oriented strategies into their organizational culture. We must begin to create naturally occurring healing environments that provide some of the corrective experiences that are vital for all of our recovery. Our school district must promote a safe and secure environment by promoting teacher wellness, investing in mental health focused professional learning and self-care wellness programs. We can improve district-wide well-being. Students indirectly benefit from staff wellness. School staff who demonstrate healthy behaviors can influence students to adopt similar healthy behaviors. Conversely, poor health conditions among school staff can negatively affect students' academic outcomes and stress levels. The health of staff improves the conditions in which students learn and interact with the adults in their school. In other words, healthier school staff likely leads to healthier students, and the benefits of employee wellness initiatives can spread throughout the entire district. Chen Hud School District has a duty to the moral safety of its students and staff. A morally safe environment actually struggles with honesty and integrity, to integrate different types of thinking versus competing to see who will win. Leadership is not about titles or paychecks. It is about one life influencing others through collaboration, awareness, engagement, mutuality, and reciprocity. We don't have to fix this now, but we do need to talk about this explicitly. Do our needs justify our ends? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Irwin. Carmen, do we have a next speaker, please?
Our next speaker is Barry Hillman.
Hi. I had a whole kind of speech plan, but this was just exhausting listening to everything tonight. I really do appreciate some of the stuff that's been trickling down, in terms of communication for the transition to Princeton plan. I just need some clarification. I know you can't answer me right now, so maybe someone can just jot it down. With the move to the 2 times a week STEM, and people are getting at it, but it's not calculating in my head. Right now, my kids have 2 times PE, 2 times music, 1 time art, 1 time library. So 2 times STEM, something's being taken away. Is it 1 time PE or is it 1 time music? Right, because those numbers are not adding up for me. I have a feeling it's 1 time music. I think PE is mandated to some extent. Now we're discussing, or we were discussing, a non-existent pre-K program, which is now going to be in existence when there's been really little outreach to the current parents who are really concerned about transitions regarding Princeton plan. A year ago, I was told that the district would meet with families that would have children in multiple buildings. This hasn't happened yet. I keep getting that it will happen soon responses, but I just want to know when is it going to happen. Right, so now we're taking on a pre-K program. You're still supposed to be having meetings with parents who have multiple children spread throughout multiple buildings, and it hasn't happened. Lastly, can you just provide an update on the so-called grant-funded carrots that, like the kitchen and the planetarium, that were supposed to come out of the Princeton plan for those of us who have elementary school age children who are kind of, this is on our shoulders and our children's shoulders. So I think that's about it. I'm happy to hear some conversation now about electric buses and pre-K programs and stuff, because it's a lot more than I feel that was had when you were discussing the Princeton plan, and I think that's really sad.
We have another speaker, Carmen?
We do. Our next speaker is Mariella Carrasco.
Evening. So I wanted to listen to the presentations tonight, and I've been jotting down my notes. My takeaway is this. I'm saddened. I'm saddened that the planning for the Princeton plan has not been taken seriously. And everything seems to be on a whim from the district. I'm not speaking for any of the teachers or the principals. Ms. Bacher had asked for a timeline. I asked for a timeline, and a few days later, one was produced on a whim. There is no project plan for something called the Princeton plan. I also want to know if anyone has seriously thought about our little ones. We are going from about 40 to 50 kindergartners per school to a total of, I'm sorry, I couldn't see the slides, but I want to say 160 or 170. Ms. Polito is amazing. I was in the PTA meeting that she mentioned and appreciate her efforts immensely. I also appreciate the year-end events, but what I'm worried about is the first few weeks of school. How are we preparing for the first few weeks of school? In preschool, the wonderful Ms. Wassel brought in an entire team of volunteers to help assist with 2, 3, and 4-year-olds for the first 2 weeks. 5-year-olds are no different. They will be scared, they will be confused. My son needs to be peeled off my leg and carried into preschool. In the last meeting, everyone looked confused when asked about parent involvement. I joined the strategic planning committee thinking we would address it, and it was nothing of the sort. I want to know what is happening from the minute my children get on a bus to when the bell rings. I know you cannot answer in this format, but it's something to think about. I'd gladly go in from 8:30 to 9 a.m. to help with crying kids, kids that may have accidents, kids that throw themselves on the floor, or kids that need to be carried in. These are babies, and I'm concerned about them. I didn't have this concern with my first 2 because it was a small class. I was 2 minutes away, literally, and my older age neighbors were there with them. I am asking for more info and assurance. I'm also offering my help. Hopefully my comments will spark an action plan and not a vague on a whim plan. I also want to thank Ms. Doyle for the STEM update. It's exciting and it sounds fun, but it's hard to imagine it in practice without seeing how it works on paper. Is science curriculum only in class? Will teachers be teaching science or only when a science teacher is in the room? Are the teachers on board and aware of this? And lastly, how do kindergartners, first graders, and second graders research and take books out by themselves? I literally have all 3 ages, and I don't see how this is possible. I'm sorry if I misunderstood what she said, but again, a plan and everything written would be very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carrasco. Carmen, do we have anybody else?
Our next speaker is Stephanie Hickey.
It is exhausting to sit here for 3 hours to get 3 minutes to talk. I have plenty of questions about each presentation, but they're not on the screen right now. So I'd have to go back to my laptop. So since I have 3 minutes, I'm gonna just go with what I have. Past decisions and current decisions in this district have caused division. And I've been asking myself why. I remember the 6-day schedule and how it was implemented. There was no parent involvement. It was rushed. It happened at the end of June. So parents couldn't organize and voice their concerns. I met with Mrs. Ruller. She told me how you might end up having gym 3 days a week. That we could actually maybe get some foreign language in there. My son's out of elementary school this year. None of that happened. Sound familiar? Sounds like the Princeton plan. Princeton plan stakeholders, that committee, even the members felt the process was rushed. When you voted on the Princeton plan, the community was locked out. We couldn't come into the Board of Ed meeting because of COVID. Your own Board of Ed members who no longer serve on the board, Lori Ryan and Mary Pat Briggy, argued with you that night that transparency and more information from the district was needed. Carol, oh, sorry, can't say your name. You wrote an email that you hold the community to put aside their differences and come together. And I'm thinking, well, how can we really do that? I think you have to press pause. Stop rushing with everything. Anything that was decided during COVID needs to be paused. Pause and let the parents' voices be heard. Let us come together. I didn't say don't do it. I'm not saying that. There's so many questions. There's so many people against one another. Let conversations happen. Let some healing happen. The superintendent once said to me during a recorded Zoom meeting that the community does not have the right to have input on anything except the school budget vote. You can go back to that recording. That is why the public votes for the Board of Ed members. It should not be neighbor against neighbor. More conversations need to be had. You are our voice. And people need to remember that when they go and vote on May 17th. Thank you.
Do we have any other speakers?
We do. Our next speaker is Erica Mills.
Hi, everyone. My name is Erica Mills, and I have, hopefully don't go over 3 minutes. My first question is, do we have a sample master schedule for Princeton plan next year? So that I think it would alleviate a lot of stress and concern for parents if they could actually physically see this, especially with the special schedule. I think it's confusing. Sitting here listening, I'm trying to understand, and I hear that the elementary school parents have questions. I think that would really help alleviate some of the concerns they have. Okay, on to the next. I have been a parent for 17 years. My children both went to affordable, enriching, engaging, and diverse local pre-K programs. They started in these programs as 2-year-olds, and it was an important part of their growth and development. I'm a strong believer in pre-K, but this doesn't seem like the answer. I've been a resident here for 22 years and have heard time and time again the threat of losing kindergarten because of a lack of funding, with the added reminder that it isn't mandated. So we don't have to have it, or it can be cut, or we can go to half day. It's been a threat. I have always scratched my head at this statement, but here we are voting to push through UPK after we have spent multiple years discussing cost-saving measures, including cutting kindergarten, middle school teams, high school classes, music, arts, and much, much more. It's a constant that keeps me up at night. What will we cut next? This is based on the narrative that comes from these Board of Ed meetings, our PTA meetings, conversations with administrators, and many, many more interactions I have had. You mentioned parents asking if we have UPK before they purchase a home here. And while I'm sure that is a question, I don't think that that is the make or break for families. We have a multitude of affordable and successful pre-K programs here. 34 students by lottery would not be the reason I do or do not move to Hendrick Hudson. There is no guarantee my child or children will even be in this program. How will the lottery work? How do families qualify? I hear what you were saying about interventions, but if we're using a lottery system, how are we sure the students who need the intervention are part of the program? How are we ensuring a balanced and successful program? For the remaining 100+ kids who might need kinder camp, what happens if we aren't meeting their needs? Can we consider bringing that back? I have many questions that I don't believe have been answered, and it's clear that some of the other board of ed trustees feel the same. So we add UPK knowing all of this, and also knowing that Princeton Plan doesn't look like it will save even half of what was promised. When you voted for Princeton Plan in 2022-2023 school year, it was with the thought and promise that it would save a significant amount of money. If I remember from the countless hours I spent on the Princeton Plan Committee, it was the only reason we even really began that discussion. So here we are with the intention to implement Princeton Plan, and with less than $1 million of cost savings, and here we are spending an additional $60,000 on UPK. Suddenly we have extra TAs. Where are they coming from? Weren't we cutting them too? How will UPK students receive specials throughout the day? How will this not take away from our kindergarten and first grade programs? What are their staff you have to support them? How can we vote on something when we don't know how it will look? We don't really know what elementary schools will even look like next year. Adding a new program right now doesn't feel like the right thing to do. Please consider all of this in the future, especially when you mention ever again cutting kindergarten. That is a deal breaker for someone who wants to move. 3 minutes. Thank you. We do. Our next speaker is Rachel Betty.
For 15 minutes, can I make a motion to extend the public comment period? Sure. All in favor? Okay. I'll go ahead.
I promise. This is
No,
really,
that's okay.
really a
Take
quick
your
one.
3 minutes.
I don't even need 3 minutes. I just would like some clarification on the 9.1% tech increase when we submitted to New York State, justifying our ESSER monies, $31,000 in software, $167,000 in smart boards, $44,000 for 141 Chromebooks. We have that we were purchasing educational technology, hardware for $233,000. So if we told New York State we needed our COVID funds to pay for these things, why is it now in our budget?
Thank you very much. Armin, do we have any more speakers?
No more speakers for agenda items.
I'm hearing a lot of questions still about Princeton Plan, and certainly direct those questions to principals as well. And Margaret's here, she's heard a lot of them as well. That brings us to committee reports. Okay. Any board comments, new business?
Not really new business, but I would like to reiterate the urge for the district to look at parent involvement in the transition plan to Princeton.
Okay, thank you.
Just have two quick things. One is that the Indian Point Closure Task Force and Decommissioning Oversight Board meeting is tomorrow night at 6 p.m. So I encourage people to attend that. And also just a reminder that the board that is convening our outreach meetings over the next 2 weeks. And please sign up to participate in those with us. We'll have small groups, about 5 people plus your trustees, 3 of your trustees there to discuss your concerns that you have. There are still available slots.
Anybody else?
Lisa, question for the decommissioning. If you want to join, how do you go about getting the information?
It's on the district website.
Perfect.
Yeah,
So you just go to the site and you can easily find for folks that want to.
There's one of the news stories is about the decommissioning.
Awesome.
All right, so that brings us to our next audience comment section, which is on non-agenda items. Carmen, do we have any non-agenda item speakers?
Speaker is Shannon Silva.
Good evening, I'll be very, very quick. I don't need a timer. I just want to go back to the last BOE meeting where it was brought up that we need more clarification and possibly a town hall principal. I took it upon myself after that meeting to kind of poll our community. I put it out on various Facebook pages and I got an overwhelming response to the question. I had some people ask me, oh, did you know that the principals moved buildings? Are the elementary school age children still receiving SPED? And it really occurred to me that we need way more communication. I think that if we get the principals together, we can see how they're going to collaborate with each other, how they're going to have first grade ready for second grade and the community. Me personally, I have an incoming kindergartner. I would love to meet all 3 principals next year. This is an exceptional time, right? So it's an exceptional measure. It's just a one-time ask. I'm not asking every year, do we need to get all 3 of them together for all the parents? No, but I think that with the grapevine, that it's more like an aggressive invasive species in this community, it would have benefit the one hen HUD, which we're trying to achieve greatly.
Thank you for your suggestion, Mr. Lumpkin. Do we have any other non-agenda speakers?
We do not tonight.
Thank you. That brings us to the end of our meeting. Can I get a motion to close the meeting, please? Can I get a second? All in favor? Thank you.